Now, very excited for this because we've been wanting to get this chap on for quite a while, but it's never happened because either I'm off or he's flying around the world. It is Tim Barnes Clay. Hi, Tim.
Hey Gareth, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Now, first of all, I want to introduce you to our listeners because they may have read something that you've done over the years, but they may not have heard your dulcet tones before.
Dulcet tones, you flatterer, you. Well, yes, being a freelancer, I have had a lot of my articles in a lot of different places over the years. Clearly, it's gone so digital that many of my paper magazines have disappeared. But yeah, I've had my articles on confused.com. I've been in magazines such as Sorted, which is a legendary magazine. I'm sure you and many of the
Mm.
listeners know it only too well. And there is a version of that continuing actually in digital format. But yeah, from insurance websites to working many years ago on ITV, actually at Central Television for 5 years, and before that on cable, before that in good old radio, which is where my heart lies, I have to say. But these days, it sounds a bit crass, but I pretty much work for anyone that pays me.
So, how did it all start for you? Because I guess a lot of us as children, we were into fast cars. We were into those cars that sound fast and, of course, they drive fast, but we've not gone on to be a motoring journalist. But you did.
Yes, I always loved cars. My dad was really into them. My grandfather was really, really into them. Um, and I remember my dad saying to me way back in about 1985, he said, I just really remember this sort of sunny day out in the garden. And he said, what do you really want to do when you grow up? And I said, I just want to really be a car salesman, Dad. And he went, have you got no higher sights than that, son? And I remember feeling gutted about him saying that. I thought, oh, what's wrong with being a car salesman? I was really confused. So anyway, I kind of went through my life thinking, what do I want to do? And the next kind of career I thought of that sounded really good was the media, which was a really kind of general thing. But I had always loved radio, and I just used to have it next to me as a student when I moved on my own to a new town. I didn't really know anyone. I found it kind of a comfort. So anyway, I decided to go into radio journalism. Um, did that, passed, got a job um, over at what was then called Trent FM, now Capital. Swiftly moved on to Heart FM, and then went to a couple of other stations. And then I found myself with an opportunity to join a cable TV station, which was wanting news and the usual kind of journalistic content. But I remember once I joined this cable channel, this really amazing guy called James Gibbons, who's now working for Discovery Warner. But anyway, he said to me, look, I've noticed you've got a really nice VW Golf GTI parked in the car park. I went, yeah. And he went, well, I've got one and I absolutely love them. You're into cars, aren't you? I went, how did you guess? Yes, I am. And he went, listen, I know you're kind of here as a journo, but I really want to kind of expand what we're doing here. And have you got time to do a bit of uh, a little bit of TV stuff if we can do car reviews. I went, absolutely. So I wasn't paid anymore, but I was giving more time to this station. And I didn't mind because, as I say, I love cars and ended up working on a program called Drive Live for a couple of years that we made from scratch in Birmingham and what was then called Birmingham Live TV. And I was only in my 20s and I was so naive. I really didn't know at that time that you could get a car and then test it. And we did. And it was really, now, obviously with YouTube and everything else, it was a really early, back in 95, 96, a really early version, I guess, of what people do now on YouTube. It was quite funky. It wasn't taken as credibly as the terrestrial TV stations. But now, of course, I think you could say it was the other way around, the tail's wagging the dog in many ways. I think terrestrial TV's perhaps not watched as much as, say, YouTube. Certainly not in this household with my kids. So I carried on going down that line of realizing I could, enjoy a career with motoring combined. But it took me a little while before I could actually make a living from motoring journalism itself. So I ended up moving on from cable to what was then called Central TV, still is, but I think it's called Central ITV now. And we ended up, well, I had a bit of a hiatus. I ended up having to do just hardcore journalism for a long time, presented, did content, lifestyle programming. And then actually, people say about a silver lining in life. I was made redundant, and I just thought, oh, this is it. This is the end. Well, and then someone said to me, it's only a job. Stop being so dramatic. I thought that's a good point, actually. It's only a job. It doesn't define me. So I ended up just having a bit of a think about life and ended up going into PR. And then on the side of my PR job, I started writing for free to some local magazines and local websites. They then started saying, look, we'll pay you a little bit if you like, 'cause we quite like your stuff. And bit by bit by bit, that snowballed into an income that still today is never going to make me a rich man, financially. But it's made me a living that I can just about call a full-time career. And I've managed to do this for the last well, certainly, well over a decade now is all I've done really. And I just love it. It's such a passion because you get to obviously drive some really lovely cars and some nails as well, if I'm honest. But you do get to travel, and I love travel. And I just have been very, very blessed to recently, for instance, never been to South Africa. Never thought I'd go. And yeah, flown out there for a week to test a couple of cars. So, this travel, the experience, it's made me feel very lucky. And I know one day I keep hearing people say to me, when are you going to get a real job? Well, I kind
If
of
I'm
keep
honest,
doing
I
this.
haven't yet either. So,
So I keep doing this and I keep loving it and I keep seeking out opportunities. And I think what it is in life, if you love something, I
mm,
think you always find a way of getting to do it. But I also do believe that, I've got three kids and I really value the freelance element of my life where I can sort of give them as much time as I wish and then put my all into work for a bit and then take my foot off the pedal, as it were, like I am now, just taking a bit of downtime.
I guess a question that you're always asked because you get the opportunity to drive so many different cars. And as you said, some of them will be great and some of them could be potentially disappointing. What has been one of those cars over your time that has stood out to you, whether it's for comfort or whether it's for speed, that you just look back at and you almost use that as a bit of a benchmark for how all other cars should be?
It's really strange, how we all develop and move on in life. And I sound really boring now, but I don't, I mean, I was kind of joking about driving nails because these days there isn't really such a thing as a bad car. New cars I'm talking about. Most work, most don't let you down. I think you and I are kind of a similar age, and I think that, well, certainly I remember my dad having rust buckets. I remember the cars were breaking down a lot. These days, so many of the cars are safe. They have to be to pass the Euro NCAP and rating and crash tests. So many cars for me now work because I just think a good car for me is one that's roomy enough to get my three youngsters in, one that does good MPG or gives you good range if you're driving an electric car. And then there's the selfish part of me that goes, do you know what? I don't want to be a family man for now. I just want to be Tim. And occasionally I'll get hold of a McLaren or I'll get hold of an Aston Martin. I had an Aston Martin Vantage last week, and that, wow, I know it's only a material possession at the end of the day, but wow, that the sound of it, the V8 engine, just just the feel of it, even the smell of it. Apologies to vegetarians or vegans, but the smell of the sort of the hide inside,
The
and the
leather.
yeah, yeah, and I don't know, it's just sounds really odd to say this because yes, again, I'll say they are material objects, but they feel like they're alive to me sometimes, these cars. So I've always found it really, really, really difficult to pinpoint my favorite car. I would say I'll turn it around and say the luckiest I've ever been, I think, to drive a lovely car was last year. I had the absolute honor to me. It was an honor to drive a Lamborghini Huracan. And it was just, I never thought, as a little boy, I remember having little Lamborghini toys, and I just never thought in a million years I'd ever get to drive one.
Hmm.
So it wasn't about prestige, it wasn't about money or anything. It was just a little dream from the little boy that's still in me, you know, getting behind the wheel. And the bonus was being able to get paid to write about it.
So how does this work? Literally, do Lamborghini contact you or Ferrari do, and they say, "We've got a car on the way to you, and you've got it for a week. You can do what you like." How does it work?
Oh, I wish it was that simple. I think you become more of a salesman, really, to be honest. I mean, obviously, yes, I'm a journalist first and foremost, but I think like any self-employed or freelance career, it's about how much energy you invest and it's about networking. And that networking can take a decade or more to get anywhere with some of these firms. Um, so it's about putting yourself forward, a bit like a radio gig, really. You're only really ever as good as your last show. So it's always about having to sound as though you're interested in the products, review them in a fair way. I think that if you go around, slagging a car off just for the sake of it, that's not really the done thing. But you can, constructively criticize a car, but also, blow the trumpet and go, wow, this
Mm.
car's awesome for these reasons. And then what you do, just showcase your work to some people, and they'll either say yay or nay. They may say, your outlets you have, yep, they're bang on for us. They may say, it's not what we're looking for. And you'll know this more than anyone working in the media, that the rise of social media has changed the landscape. And so not only do I have other motoring journalists who are my colleagues, but there are now influencers who are my colleagues,
Mm.
people that have never really been into the media before, but suddenly found this new way of expressing themselves. And yeah, so the landscape's changed hugely just in a decade.
And I guess it's that balance, isn't it? Because you need to be honest with a review, but you've also got to be careful because if Porsche send you their new car and you say, "This is a dog, this is awful, everything's in the wrong place, it's got rattles everywhere," are they going to send you the new car that they've got, or will they almost black cross you on their books?
I think most manufacturers appreciate honest, impartial reviews, and the audience, the readership, the listeners, the viewers do too, because there is a bit of a blurred line now with some influencers who you can kind of tell are paid to say this car's
Hmm.
awesome. And I think most of us aren't stupid when we're watching, listening, or reading something. We know when something's a real review and we know when something's an advertorial. And manufacturers, I think, don't really see that that's not in their best interest. So they some of them will pay and they'll have them on the marketing budget. They'll get an influencer in to promote something. Um, but I think that they value journalists. I think if you went around absolutely slating a car and not, not finding anything, it's a bit like, I shouldn't say cars like a person, it's a really bad analogy, but if you said I really didn't get on with that guy, I
Yeah.
found everything about him horrendous, awful, terrible character. There has to be a redeeming feature, surely,
Yeah.
surely, with somebody or something. So, if you can concentrate on the redeeming features, but equally, who are you writing for? We all know, don't we? With you, especially in
Mm.
this radio station, it's the listenership. Who are you targeting? What is your core audience? So for me, a lot of the time, because I do live and breathe being a dad, I will review family cars. And I will review how many kids you can get, when I was a bit younger, how many baby seats you could get across the back of the car, all that kind of stuff. Can you get a stroller in the back? That might sound boring, but most people want that kind of information. Very few people have got enough money to buy a supercar, you know. But
It's funny
but
because so me and my brother
mm,
are in complete different times of our life. So he's only recently got married and there's a 10-year age gap. So he's at that point now where he can afford a flash car and he keeps saying things like, "Oh, what you should do is to save up for a nice car." And I'm thinking, hold on a minute, I've got three young kids. The anxiety it would cause me to have crisps all over and dirty feet all over the leather, it wouldn't be worth it. And the thing is, an interesting experience I had the other day, there was two actually. And you mentioned about how cars, they don't seem to be as bad as they used to be. And my car had a puncture the other day, and rather than panic, it was like a nice trip down nostalgia lane. And it was like, wow, I get to actually get it fixed. And I had to nurse it to the garage. Whereas my brother, he doesn't experience that because he literally has it all on the app. And if anything happens, he can report it. And then the guy comes to his house to fix it. And the other experience was that because I've got an older car, and as you said, it's a family car. It's for the purpose of making sure that the kids are safe and I can drop them off places. And when we go on holiday, we can fit as much as we possibly can in the boot. And I was in a car park and a person backed into me. Now, they were in a really flash car. It was something like an Audi that was only about 6 months old. And the person got out and they were devastated. He was, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. And I think they were rather shocked when I said, look, I don't mind too much, really. Is your car all right? Because for me, it was a case of, do you know, one more mark on the bodywork. Maybe it hasn't been caused by the kids opening the door near a wall, but I didn't really have that worry about it. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it, really, with cars? And as you said, you've got two ways to take it there. Either the people who want to know how quick can this car go, and the other people who say, well, will I be able to get all the car seats in? And will I be able to reach over to the back to pass them a bag of crisps if they're crying because they're hungry?
Yeah, yeah, you're so spot on. So many people see a car as a tool, and I do when I'm in a rush. You know, however nice the car is, if you're in a rush, it's amazing how you can suddenly forget you're in something amazing. You need to get there, and you might take the speed hump a little faster than you would do normally. You know, my dad's always said to me, he's 81 now, so he knows what he's talking about. He always, and he, as I say, you know, he's always the one that was into his cars, but he always said, Tim, never let your possessions possess you. And it's true because
Mm.
once you get something that's so awesome, and I've been so precious about some of the cars I've had. Yeah, you go to the beach and there's sand in the footwell from the kids. I've got to hoover it up, and you can't
Yes,
relax. You know the chocolate on the back
exactly.
seat. Yeah, and as I was just going to say, just as we were sort of finishing the last question and answer session about the different kind of audiences, is that you know McLaren and Aston Martin. You know, I'm writing that for a luxury magazine, and actually one of the ones that is still in print, and you know, that is for an audience that clearly can afford a car, but is that expensive? So when you do talk about MPG or whatever, they don't really want to know because if you're that wealthy, you can afford,
Yes.
you don't want to be bothering about
Yeah.
efficiency really. Um, but yes, the your brother is a great example there of the almost what I would describe as the clinical experience of owning a brand new car these days, where you do just call up somebody on an app or contact someone that way. My main car I share when I'm not driving lovely cars is a 12-year-old Vauxhall Corsa that I share with my oldest daughter. You know, and there is this kind of almost pleasure in what you've described as never mind, it's another knock.
Yes.
Gives it character.
Absolutely. And he was like, and the other thing as well. So, I was away recently on this church youth weekend. That was an eye opener, I can tell you. I thought I was young until I went on that, but it was interesting because I've got the big Ford S Max. I've got the big dad car, I like to call it. I was the one who ended up sort of transporting the kids here, there, and everywhere. And we played football. They had their muddy boots on. And I could see all the other younger parents or people who haven't even got kids who were there helping. You could see that sort of worry on their face of, hold on a minute, where are those boots going? For me, I was just like, right, in you go, it's fine, and not a problem at all. And yeah, as you say, it's just different cars for different purposes.
Absolutely right. And interestingly, over the years doing this, I've found that some cars are the equivalent of your clothes. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. People do wittingly or unwittingly judge you for what you're driving. So I can categorically tell you it's not a coincidence. I've been driving. I tell you, I drove. I can't do it here because we're being recorded, but clearly. But let's just say a man lifted a certain finger to me for a long period of time while I was driving
Right.
A Tesla Model Y. And my daughter was with me. I'm glad she was. She's 18. I was driving her to work one very pleasant Saturday morning, driving this nice test car. And the irony is, the BMW driver, who they've had a bad rep in the past, kind of suddenly puts his brakes on this dual carriageway, slows right down beside us, rolls his window down, and then gives a certain gesture to us. And we're like, eh? And my daughter was like, well, what have you done, Dad? I went, absolutely nothing. And she went, I didn't think you had. Anyway, it only dawned on us afterwards. He was irate, really irate. He's had a few issues after that with other drivers. It was just a week or two after Mr. Musk
Mm.
had allegedly been caught making other kind of signals. And it just goes to show, if you're in a car that has suddenly a bad image, you that are then tied to that car. And somehow people assume you must be a bit like said
So,
person who manufactures the car.
just to confirm that that is the case, my brother has one of those said cars, and he was at the golf club. Now, you said that he's a certain category of person. I use the phrase pretentious, actually, but he was at the golf club, which is a bit hoity toity anyway, in all honesty. And he came out and somebody had egged his car.
It's,
A member of presumably the golf club had egged his car. And I asked him, I was like, well, why's that happened? What's gone on? And he said, yeah, I'm sort of getting used to it now. And it's something that's happening quite a lot because of
yeah,
that make of car. They just assume that, well, you must share the views of the makers of that car.
yeah, yeah. It's sad, and I tell you what, it's becoming quite common now. Somebody I write some video for has a Tesla, and was yeah in the newspaper the other day being quoted about how Tesla sales have fallen quite rapidly, actually. Yeah, so that's and then people were kind of half jokingly, half seriously saying, "Yeah, Tesla's now replaced the image of the BMW and Audi driver," you know?
It's funny. So I guess you will have seen working in that industry the real change and the shift between the combustion engine cars and the electric ones. So, I mean, most people know now that there's no combustion engine or car I know of that could beat an electric car. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
Well, there are some. I mean,
Acceleration, anyway, maybe not
yeah,
top speed.
yeah. So the McLaren, that equaled, in fact, beat electric cars. The Aston Martins perhaps on a par, but in terms of family cars, you're right. You get a family electric car. The acceleration is phenomenal. These are wolves in sheep's clothing. They don't even look that fast, but because you haven't got to wait for all the combustion engines to do its thing, you've got this instant torque, this sort of instant pulling power, this
Mm.
twisting motion of energy that can just send you crazily from one end of the road to the other if you don't know what you're doing. So I think, I mean, the nearest thing I think, if you've never driven an EV, which stands for electric vehicle, it's a bit like if you were a kid on the Dodgems and you put your foot down and you just boom, you go, and you go, and you stop and you go. It can make you feel a bit sick if you're not used to them. Most electric vehicle drivers, though, me included when I test one, are more concerned about range because there is not so much now, but there was a lot of range anxiety going on. If you are an electric vehicle owner, you will undoubtedly have an electric vehicle wall box attached to your home, or you have one in the street, if you charge, it's a lot more expensive if you go and charge up publicly or sorry, at a public charging station. But you do think more about how you drive because of keeping the
Mm.
efficiency there. But electric vehicles, they are coming down in price, but they have been quite expensive up until now. So I think a lot of people are still unsure. So hybrids, there are hybrids there, which are the sort of the middle ground, if you like. Um, bit of electric and a bit of petrol going on, and that suits some people too. But increasingly, people aren't really buying cars because of image or because of how they sound anymore. It's because of things like salary sacrifice schemes, tax, all to do with work and the financial side of things, really. So I think a car with character, a car with a few dents in, like yours or mine. You know what? Sometimes they do. They seem like these living and breathing beasts that I kind of originally
Yes.
went into this game for. You know.
So, what, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit then, but what sort of trends are you noticing at the moment in how people are buying cars and also the designs? Because there does seem to definitely be, you can tell from a mile off, can't you, if a car is an EV or if it's not. And
Yeah.
I can't quite put my finger on why that is, but they all look electric.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you see, the old design of a car, of course, it almost like was this three-box design, certainly with saloons. So you had the front where the engine was, then you had the passenger compartment, then you had the boot. And obviously, over the years, we've had hatchbacks in the States, and SUVs are the biggest and most popular. SUVs, sports utility vehicles, they are the high-riding cars. People have loved them for years now because they just give you that extra view of the road. They feel safe. But EVs, well, if you look carefully, a lot of EVs, nearly, well, all of them have the green edge to their number plate. Okay, okay, straight away.
I didn't even
But
know that.
yeah, yeah, if you look at a number plate of any EV, if you see a green edge to it, that'll tell you it's an EV. But also, the producers of these cars make them as slippery as possible. So as aerodynamically brilliant as they can be, because efficiency again, that's the main thing. But they don't all need that front compartment really when you think about it, because they don't have an engine. So weirdly though, most manufacturers are still making them in that shape, so they look like they've got an engine, but they've got batteries in the floor. They've got a few little parts at the front, like air con and windscreen washer fluid and all that. But they've got motors that drive the axles, and they've got batteries that sit flat in the floor. So you'll see a sort of a bubble shaped kind of sort of SUV. And a lot of these cars are Chinese. You may have noticed more and more Chinese manufacturers just in this last year or two are making their way into the country and starting to do really, really well. So it's a bit like you and I would have been a bit too young, but it's a bit like when our parents and grandparents suddenly started seeing what they would describe as foreign manufacturers coming in, which is very common now, the likes of what was then Datsun, Nissan, Toyota all coming here. They're all very normal to us now. But this is what the Chinese are doing. So the Chinese, 20 years time, I bet you it'll just be the norm for our kids to
Mm.
reel off a bunch of Chinese names.
It's funny, I've never thought about that before, but you could have an electric car that hasn't got a front on it in a way, or at least looking like it does. But then, and this is where marketing comes in, I guess, that if you change something too much from the traditional car shape, would people buy it?
Well, this is the thing. Us humans are funny things, aren't we? I mean, years ago as a student, I used to work at a very well-known electrical store that sold TVs and computers and what have you. And I always remember sort of the top salesman there turning up all the contrast and brightness and all the TVs at the front of the store. So why are you doing that? He said, very simple psychology. Human beings like magpies, they get drawn to bright, shiny things and then want to buy them. So if you think about it, cars do that, car dealers do that. They tie balloons to cars, don't they? And they make them look all lovely and great. But if you change something radically, wow, you're right. We do sort of regard it with a little bit of fear. Oh, I'm not sure. No, I don't know about that. People don't like change. And I think bit by bit, I've got on the drive now a VW ID Buzz, which is effectively a little bit like, as my kids describe it, the Scooby-Doo van, if you've ever seen that cartoon, right? And the front, I mean, it's got a front, but it's so kind of blunt. It looks really strange, almost like a little bit like a piggy bank on wheels. It's a very strange sort of shaped car. But I had a guy, funnily enough, in a BMW yesterday, and I thought he was going to give me some aggro. I was a bit doing this as he put his window down, and I put mine down because he was doing that. And he went, mate, that is really cool. I went, oh, cheers. No irony. He was being serious. Meanwhile, my kids are all, Dad, do you have to take us to school in this? It's so embarrassing. Because not only does it look a little odd, it is huge because it's designed for 7 people with not much of a front, but it's bright yellowy green. So they're kind of, this is not cool, Dad. And yet that 40, 50-year-old bloke in the Beamer, BMW, thought it was. So yeah, I think car manufacturers, they are in a time, well, they're always in a sort of a period of experimentation. But yeah, you're right. I don't think they can suddenly go from 0 to 100. They have to sort of gently change.
Now, just before you go, we are going to have you on more frequently, if that's all right. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
haven't even asked yet, to be honest.
absolutely.
But we are hoping that each month we can focus on a few cars and you can tell us about them because I've been, I'm at that stage where you may have passed this stage now, but we've got two cars. We've got the dad car and then we've got the driving to work car. Now, the driving to work car is a small Ford Fiesta, which is on its way out. And I knew it was on its way out when the mechanic said to me, you probably want to start looking and saving for something different now because it's done 140,000 miles, this Ford Fiesta. I love it. And it's amazing that when you hoover it out, it still feels like a brand new car. But anyway, I was thinking we could probably be looking at an EV because I've got solar panels on my roof at home.
You
And
know,
one car in particular, I don't know if you've had any experiences with this, is the brand new electric Renault 5.
oh yes, I've driven that.
Have
Oh,
you driven it?
I've driven it. I've
Right,
driven it
hold that. I don't want you to tell me anything about this now because the next episode we do, I want you to give me a full review on that. And I'm
too.
hoping it's a bad review because if it's a good review, I'll want it even more. But what I can do is once we've recorded this, I can play it to my wife and that could convince her that that's the car we need to get next. So hold on to that. I want you just to answer some quick fire questions before you go, okay?
Yeah.
So, quick fire being, we've only got a handful of these, manual or automatic?
Automatic at this age.
Why?
I just I'm the wrong side of 50 now, and my foot hurts, and we live in the UK, and the motorways seem more congested than they do free flowing these days. And I just think if you want to get to the end of your journey feeling fresh, you need an auto.
Classic or supercar?
Classic.
What kind of classic? So, if there's one classic car that you go, yeah, that's the one, what would it be?
We see now people wouldn't even think of these as classics, but I still think of them as classics. I'd go because it reminds me of my dad in the mid 80s. I'd go for a really lovely Ford Capri or Ford Cortina, something that was really made up, looking really cool, you know?
Now, I know this isn't about me, and not many people will care about my response on this, but for me, if I could sit behind the wheel of any car, just to get that out of my system, it would be a Ford Escort Cosworth.
Ah, yes, me
And
too.
the reason is because that was my dream car when I first passed my tests, and I always said, I'll have one day. And now I'm at that age where I start thinking, I wouldn't be able to fit the kids in and the weekly shop if I got that.
But you'd love it. You'd scratch that itch, wouldn't you? And again, it all links back to, I think it's a nostalgic thing, you know?
Have you ever driven an Escort Cosworth?
No, and I'd love to. That is on my bucket list to do.
Well, do you know what? I'll leave this up to you. Your challenge between now and the end of 2025 is to try and get your hands on one, to drive over to us here in Manchester, and we can both get it out of our system at the same time.
I like that challenge. I'll try and meet that challenge. Yes, I like the idea of it.
Um, Nuremberg or Goodwood?
So the Goodwood's easier to get to, and I did live near there as a kid in Chichester, but I prefer the Nürburgring because it just has. I've been there 3 times and I love it every time. It's a great place to be.
And the
So is
last
Goodwood.
few, um, dream car that you haven't yet driven? An Escort Cosworth, I think.
Yes, I think it has to be that. It has to be that, but also a Lamborghini that has just any sort of brand new Lamborghini. I haven't driven enough Lamborghinis, so anything else out there, I would like to drive with that name on it. Yeah.
Do you know, I had a very enjoyable but scary experience when, for one of my birthdays, I can't remember when it was, but my wife got me one of those driving experiences on a proper racetrack. And I drove a Ferrari, I think it was an F50. And what was concerning is that the guy who was the instructor, you do a test drive before on the track. And he managed to do a quicker time in a clapped out Rover, which was the one that had us in it as passengers. And he was showing you where the hotspots are and stuff. He managed to beat my time in a Ferrari F50 by something like 10 seconds in a clapped out Rover. But it was a really interesting experience, that, because I was driving it like I would be driving to go and get my weekly shop. I think I even indicated on the track at some point, and he was saying, no, it's fine, push it harder. And he wanted me to hit a corner at about 110 miles an hour.
I know that feeling. Well, I've done this a few times. Once I was very lucky enough and had that given to me as a present, like you had, and other times I've been through work, and nearly every time the instructor's basically slapping my leg, going, "I
Mm,
told you to stop braking," but I'm approaching a corner at over 100. You don't need to brake. This
yes.
car will make it, I guarantee you. But I think there is a certain, again, it's psychology. If you're in a bit of an old clapped out thing, and you are driving it, man, you're ragging it around, you know, no one wants to hurt themselves and come off the track, but there's less to worry about. But if you're driving a car that's well over 100 grand, you are thinking the last thing I want to do is even, you know,
Yeah.
put a fly on the windscreen, let alone dent the wing. So yeah, I think there is that worry that you're in someone else's car and you need to be respectful of it. If you were in your old Fiesta and got that going properly and took it on a track and got rid of it off the road, you'd probably drive that like it was, well, you'd just probably go mad for it, you know?
The last few, petrol or diesel?
It would have to be petrol now. Although I have to say, I always love diesel because they've got that low down torque. Great, if you want to drive from John O'Groats to Land's End, pretty much full tank of diesel will do it. There's nothing like seeing that range of 700 miles of range. You don't even need to stop to go to the loo if you can hold on. But now petrol, yeah, with the emission zones. I mean, even in Sheffield, I was there at the weekend. Even Sheffield's got low emission zones that you have to pay for. So I went up in my daughter's Corsa rather than my wife's old Peugeot diesel that she's got. Because so yeah, petrol it would have to be these days.
And now this could be a challenging one. Motor or engine? Basically, electric or diesel or petrol. Which one would you go for?
At the moment, I'm only saying this. This is a bit of a get out. My son, who's 15, loves the sound of cars. So just to keep him happy, I'd have to go for an engine because he'll talk about last week's Aston till the cows come home purely because of the sound. It sounded like a caged tiger. But EVs, I'm warming up to them, I have to say. I have got a wall box of my own, so I am getting used to charging them up.
Tim, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. And
Likewise.
just tell us a little bit about your socials because I like to see the reels that you put up. There was one the other day, and I can't remember the car. I know it was red, which probably doesn't narrow it down at all, but it was done recently, a red supercar, a sports car that you were driving around. So tell us how we can keep an eye on your socials and if you've got a website and a YouTube.
Yeah, so I am really mainly on Instagram at T Barnes Clay, TBarnesClay, or just put my name in, Tim Barnes Clay. That's the main one I'm on. I don't have, or maybe I should have my own YouTube, but I normally present for other people on their YouTube channels. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, just stick my name into Google. But yeah, Instagram's where I'm at for most of the time.
It's been great speaking with you. So, the next edition, which will be in the next few weeks, can we talk about this Renault 5?
Yes, absolutely, we can.
I
Love
can't
to.
wait because I need you to convince my wife that that's the car we need. That's the one we need in our life.
Great strategy.
Bless you, Tim, and thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Gareth. Take care.